once. All right, so right now we let me go back to my schedule. We have Pine Valley. And I think we have 30 minutes set aside for Pine Valley. Yes, we do. So we have Tom Rizlo and Therese Deckert here. So if you all want to go ahead and give a presentation first, and then we'll take questions after you've had a chance to kick us off here.
Sure. You know, we don't have a chance very often to tell you about how fortunate you are to have Pine Valley. There's a lot of good people there. I don't live here. I didn't grow up here, but I couldn't be more proud than to work with the people that I do there. You have a wonderful bunch of managers. I've had the same management team for the last 3.5 years. It's a good crew. We have 3 pillars, and I think I've told you this before, 3 things that we worry about the most, and then everything else kind of falls under those. We do what's right for the people that come to us for care. We try to keep our staff, try to keep doing what's right for them. Then the third thing is doing what's right for the taxpayers. And so if we keep our eyes on those 3 things, it seems that everything else kind of falls under those 3 things. Now, 2 of those pillars, the doing what's right for the taxpayers and doing what's right for the staff, are the ones that are causing us the most challenge right now. We have, as of today, we have 12 open positions. We have 8 full-time and 4 part-time positions. That's the most in my 3.5 years at Pine Valley. That's a big concern because without staff, we can't accept people that get referred to us. And so far, most days we're able to piece that together, but that I just tell you that that's a big challenge. And I think if you have eyes to see and you have a car to drive, you've been around, you see what I see everywhere. And it's a huge challenge. And Mark, you asked me about a month ago when we did the new recruitment bonus. Hope it helps. We haven't gotten one from it yet, but we'll see. We'll see. In our summary document to you, we asked for 2 things. I think the rest of the county is not asking for, and we asked to be able to go up to step 6 for our on our pay scale, which others aren't asking to do, and we are asking for a wait for our organization to take effect like right after the board approves the budget late October. We actually need to do like yesterday. So that's our situation and how serious it is for our staffing. As far as taking care of the taxpayers and doing what's right for them, in my previous budgets that we put together for the county, we would make an estimate of where we thought we'd come out the following year and make an estimate of what could go then to the county. The trustees did that a little bit differently this year. We essentially have 3 pots of funds that we're worrying about. One is our operating reserves, and we try to keep that where it needs to be, and we're comfortable with where that is. Then our capital funds, because we don't want to sit in a situation where we have major improvements to have to make. We don't have enough money there. This year, we went to the trouble of doing a capital forecast for the next 20 years, inflated that forward, and figured out how much money we need to put into our capital fund to keep it viable for the next 20 years. So we feel comfortable with those 2 funds. At times, we're going to have more funds than we should have. The county should support us having 2 to 3 months worth of operating reserves, but why should we be sitting on more than that? And so like at the last trustee meeting, we took some of those excess funds, 250,000, we put them over to this 3rd fund. It happens to have a name of debt service fund. It could be called anything. It's an unrestricted account. So now that fund has $504,996, 504,996. That's the fund that holds our funds that we don't need. And so that's the fund that you could have access to. And the trustees' action is such that throughout the year, when we have situations where we think we have more than we need, we'll just put into that fund. It could happen once a year, could happen twice a year, could happen more than that. So currently it's at 504,996. Will we add more to it before the end of the year? I don't know, but that's where it's at. We don't have any intent to take money back out of that fund. It's for the county to use. That's all I had for my opening remarks, and I'll take questions. Didn't want to get into the details of the budget line by line. I don't think that would be productive use of our time.
Can I ask a
First question, Mr. Chair, this has kind of helped to maybe set some more context. Myself and Administrator Rislow have had several conversations. So to understand in our relationship with Pine Valley, I think it's important also to kind of understand, through debt service, there's about $1.5 million that we handle with debt service. Essentially, if you could visualize it going towards the cost of having that type of a service. From that, this year, then we have a projection of potentially $500,000 that can be displaced from revenues to potentially come back to the county in some way, shape, or form. Whether that goes to offset that debt service that we're taking out of tax levy or operations as part of the conversation that we're having here. To put it in grander context in the conversation of, well, this is a completely type of it is a discretionary service that we have taken previous action to have. And that we're following the decisions from previous county boards with it. So then we ask the question of the money grubbing county administrator, well, can we just sell it? And I think the most recent number that you've gotten back, Tom, was 10.6. I'm sorry if I'm calling you out with it was.
If we sold the
If
facility,
we were to sell the facility, it was
something close to 9 million.
Nine.
It would be less than that, given the changes they would have to make to operations. They would slash benefits, they would cut some staffing. And in lieu of that, the person with knowledge about this thought it would sell for less than that. And then still have your debt of, what is it currently, 17 or 18 million to have to pay off as well.
So we could sell it, we'd still be left with $10 million of
Yeah.
debt that we're gonna have to pay in debt service, and then we would not have our $500,000, potentially not always to account for, of a revenue return towards that.
You'd have a property taxpayer because it would be a private company.
So there'd be a revenue source.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So then, yes, so put it in context, and I appreciate, so then there was the conversations we've had historically of, well, how much is Pine Valley gonna have this year? How much is Pine Valley gonna have this year? Is we're kind of relying on that now, based on the last few budgets, as a revenue to augment our Fund 10s and other placements that I thought was a terrifically creative solution of, this is what we need to maintain operational solvency with our rainy day fund that we have.
Correct.
And now you have your capital improvement fund, which I think is a great idea, because I think it would be very challenging for that department to come forward and ask for significant amounts of money through our capital short terms or through any other bonding. So I think that's
Right.
a good move.
Right.
And then we have then that earmarked amount where we hit the budget cycle each year. We're going to know, okay, this is the pot of money that we have beyond those calculated expenses.
I wish we could say that Pine Valley was a cash cow for the county. In pre-pandemic, I was seeing 3 consecutive years where there was $800,000 and $1 million of excess funds. But now, since the pandemic, the whole industry seems to be shaken up quite a bit. Occupancy is not returning anywhere to where it was. We can be, as recently as just a few weeks ago, we were down at under 80% occupancy, and today we're over 90% occupancy. The ebbs and flows are just very significant, and they weren't there so much pre-pandemic. Of course, the staffing is what we struggle with.
In context of staffing, if I can have you talk on these 2 points then as well, is first one, Department of Labor has now come up with a report of which they have a projection that we're at about 1.1 million nurse shortage, I think, across for the entire country. The second part of it too, though, is you had also reported, though, that through the governor's biennium budget, there's going to be a 12.5% increase for Medicaid. So can I have you talk on both of those and how they line up and what they need?
I don't care so much for the national number, but it's the local number that affects us the most. We've gotten 2 new staff in the last 3 months, and both on call to pick up occasional hours. And we have a dozen positions we're advertising for, so it's a huge deal. The increase in the Medicaid program is unprecedented. Normally, we're looking at 1 to 2, maybe even 3% from the Medicaid program. In the first year of the biennium budget, next year may be a freeze to that.
I'll just make sure to speak into that.
This year, it's 12% retroactive to July 1, and next year, 12% retro. And part of the reason for that is they understand the crisis in staffing, that all the nursing homes have been showing statistics about the national statistics, state statistics that you're talking about. So we'll be expected to do something with that. So part of my reason for asking for the wage increases and to do it sooner, one, we need it. Two is, I mean, if we don't use the funds that the state is expecting us to use to try to address that. Does that help a little bit?
That's what I was kind of trying to bring out was there's a Medicaid increase. The idea through joint finance committee and the governor is
Right.
allocations for staffing, knowing that that's the problem.
So I think that what would not look good would be if we took that 12%, didn't do anything for the staff, and we just put it in our pocket and had more money to give to the county, which would be wonderful to help the county with all of its issues, but it would put egg on our face to try to face the legislators in a couple of years for the next biennium budget.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, for dominating your conversation here for the last 10 minutes. Thank you.
That's okay. I'm just trying to make sure everyone can hear here since we have to keep one of our doors open.
And in your overall big scheme of stuff, I know with the health insurance coming up 16% instead of 7%, that's a big concern. But remember, Clint, we've talked about before that we're able to fund a significant portion of that. We budgeted for a little bit of a surplus, and so we can handle that being 16% instead of 7% if need be. That wouldn't all be additional new cost to the
For
county.
the levy. Thank you.
Yeah.
Supervisor Luck, did you have
I-
something?
I just want to make sure I'm understanding. I mean, you aren't actually asking for any tax levy dollars to fund your operation.
No, we used to 2 years ago, but we're blessed with that big amount of the loan being on the taxpayer.
Okay.
That's just a huge, huge plus to make operations work. But correct, no, we're not asking. We're hoping to be able to provide help back to the county.
One question I have is, does your $9.2 million budget, does it account for lost revenue income from the American Rescue Plan or not?
No, we don't have any stimulus dollars accounted for. And our budget assumes that we don't have to pay anything back, but we're not even clear about that. But in the auditing process, we set up a liability amount in case we do have to pay something back, so it won't come out of our cash to do that.
And then, Mr. Langrick, is that one of the eligible expenses
Yes.
from American Rescue Plan?
Yes, and we do have it as a tentative request right now on our draft plan.
Do you have a rough figure of what your lost revenues were that could be recouped through ARP?
I was gonna say somewhere over $200,000. We made a 3-point request for American Rescue Funds. Some of it was lost revenue. Some was for premium pay for staff, because we went through a COVID period where we had 35 different staff get COVID in 10 different residents. And we put in a request for $30,000 towards an outside shelter for outside visiting that we don't have right now. But that's not in the budget anymore.
But $230,000, that's roughly the amount of lost revenue.
Tracking, I've got it in your ballpark, $250,000 for this would be a public health response, I'm sorry, no, $30,000 for the cost of the building shelter.
Right.
Valley. Revenue 263, 842. For a premium pay for essential workers, 68.
So would it be possible then to move $263,000 from ARP to the Pine Valley budget and then in turn take the $263,000 and put it into the debt service fund?
Sure, I thought about that possibility as well. That's a way to get that money into the hands of where it's needed, sure.
With our ARP funds, our overall lost revenue projections for the county, the formula that we're working for is 5.5 million. So all of our 3.3, as we talked about, is discretionary type of use. So we wouldn't have to go through that process if the point was to try to get it back kind of unrestricted.
I see.
Yeah, you don't have to play that game. Yeah.
But at the same time, though, with our earmarking that we've done and trying to keep with the intent of that bill, we have kind of taken the preliminary steps to earmark some of those funds for those categories directed towards Pine Valley.
Okay. And then I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about your capital improvement fund. Last, we had talked at finance, I think it was $900,000.
Yeah.
And you said that you all have been working on a 20-year plan, and I'm just curious to know what the current balance is, and when do you expect capital expenses to start hitting? I know at a previous meeting, you used the example of replacing the roof. And so when would a new roof need to be installed on the facility? I'm just kind of wondering, when are those expenses really going to start to materialize, given that the building's pretty new?
Right. 15.
Mr. Chairman, could you ask Mr. Langrick and Tom to both speak up more or get their mic closer to their mouth?
Absolutely. Yep. So Mr. Rizzo, if you
Sure.
can just speak directly to that and just a little louder.
Sure, we've not touched that capital fund. It's still at that number of a little over $900,000. The capital forecast that we did for the next 20 years does include a roof expense happening maybe 15 to 20 years from now. We took inflationary factors on all those numbers as well. We projected out how much would be needed, and we came up with a number of between $35,000 and $50,000 a year we would add to our capital fund with a one-time move over each year for the next 20 years, and we'll be fine. We have capital needs every year, but nothing as significant as a roof.
Okay, thank you. Yep, Supervisor Gentis.
You're asking, I don't know if now's the time we're just.
Ms. Janice, please speak up.
We're talking about the step 6 going to step 6 and the need, which I understand why, because you maybe would get more people applying for jobs.
And retain people, you know.
So would you be able to keep, when they go to step 6, those 3 funds the way they are currently and be able to afford that? And 2, did I read correctly that you won't get Medicaid funding if everyone is not vaccinated that works for you, and will that hurt you getting staffing? Did I read that right?
A couple of good points that you raised there, Linda. Our budget assumes that we were going to get permission from you to go to step 6, so we're covering that in our budget. And now that you bring up the vaccination issue, we have 12 open positions right now. It's possible we could have people leave if they were mandated to receive the vaccine, so that would make matters worse. There's much to come out yet in details, and so we do not know what the details will be, but that could complicate matters even more for us. Does that answer your questions?
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I'm just curious, would you be able to ever handle paying the debt as a part of your budget? Paying the debt service indirectly instead of it going the way it does now, where we.
On the trajectory of how staffing has been and how in the cost of health insurance and the continuing cost of retirement benefits, which many nursing homes aren't able to even think about having, no. A nice thought. Back when Whipfleet did the projections, they expected a looked like best case scenario that maybe half of it would be pre-pandemic when things were much different. But just my guess is no, that wouldn't be a likely scenario.
Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, well, I'll make a general comment that I'm on the Pine Valley Board, so I get to see on a monthly basis explanation of expenses and how we're allocating funds, and in my opinion, we do an exemplary job of that at the facility. So many people have told me, so-called, Don, I'm making air quotes here, so-called experts have told me, oh, the one thing your county can't have is a nursing home, get rid of it. Well, we've heard what we would get for it if we tried to sell it, and the ramifications of that are way beyond imagination. The county exists for several reasons that we've talked about mandated benefits this morning. We've talked about police protection, the sheriff's department, but the one thing the county does exist for is to provide a necessary and needed service that otherwise could not be provided. And Pine Valley is a prime example of that. Yes, we do have private nursing homes in the area, but there was a need in the county many, many years ago, and that need has continued up through present day. And Pine Valley does a fine job of meeting that need. So the expenses, the revenues are manageable. We've done a fine job with that. The state of Wisconsin is now recognizing there is a staff shortage and it needs to be addressed. They've given us additional funds through the Medicaid reimbursement program. So to not use those funds the way they were intended would not be in our best interest. And I really urge you to support the change in the step that has been presented here. And I do feel that the nursing shortage, the staff shortage, those people, it is a different situation, really. I mean, from the rest of the county I'm talking about. It is a different situation and it's a critical need and one that we have to address now, especially with the state recognizing that. That's all I'll say right now.
Okay, anyone else? All right, well, thank you so much for
Thank you for your time.
taking the time to come and visit with us today. Present your budget.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
I just want to say that I fully support the presentation and the request as submitted by Administrator from Pine Valley.
Okay, thank you. All right, you all have a nice day. Okay, so up next, we have UW Extension Office. So, Mr. Haiti, if you want to go ahead and come up here and introduce yourself, and most folks are just giving a brief presentation and then we're taking questions from there, so.
So, hello, everyone. I know a few of you.
Oh, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but that speaker there, I don't know if you heard that whole exchange
Gotcha.
before, but you got to speak pretty loudly in that.
Don, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
All right. So maybe to talk, just to be a little clearer, you guys okay if I remove?
We
or-
actually have to keep them on. in there,
Gotcha.
so Just get as close as you can. to
Yep,
the
nope,
speaker.
that's fine. So just a quick introduction for those of you who don't know me. My name's Adam Haiti. I just took over as the area extension director for this area in officially August 1st, so transitioning from Craig. Benefit is though, I was the ag educator here for 17 years, so I've got some familiarity with the system here. But welcome to all you guys and getting to know me. As far as our extension budget, it's pretty basic. We sit on all levy dollars. And a big majority of our budget is based in salaries and contracted service. So I don't know for sure if you guys are also, I do a little bit different budget than the county one, just because for me, it's visually easier to understand. I don't know if you guys got a copy of this as well or not. But looking at it, the budget numbers this morning, it looks like we went with option 2, right, Clint, that I had proposed to you guys.
Right now, sir, we got the one where we're at a,
185,032, right?
yep, 185,032.
So basically what's happening with the particular budget is with the increases in support staff salaries and some minor increases in the agent contracts, working with the staff basically said as educators, we're gonna take less reimbursement opportunities, mileage, training opportunities and look for other sources that way and take out some of our office supplies. to try to come close to meeting that 0%. We don't hit 0% in the proposed budget there, but that's really what we're looking at. Trying to keep staff steady across the board. So with that, I will just ask you guys for questions, what we do, how we operate, those kinds of questions.
Since two of us are on the, at least two of us, maybe more, are on the extension committee, and other folks haven't been able to see that spreadsheet that you prepared. Can you go just a little bit into more detail about the two options that you prepared and what some of the more specific impacts to especially staff hours would be? I think that's been the thing that other departments have shared that's been really
Gotcha.
helpful.
So when we went to committee, I actually prepared three situations. First situation is if we just entered in the cost, right? So the staff increase and the increase in contracted services, that was a $6,000 increase to the extension budget. At the committee, the committee had decided to absorb all those costs forward, with also sending two other options to Clint that showed that we actually did do some work at looking at reducing down to a 0% increase in levy budget. The one that was in the proposed budget, like I said, where they reduced cost, was trying to take some out of office supplies, and the third proposal that came out of there was actually reducing an administrative support staff from 28 hours a week to 24 hours a week. So right now we have two support staff. The quote unquote air quotes on, full-time is 35 hours and the second part-time is 28 hours. So we're roughly an hour or 1.6 FTE, something like that, for support staff. And so the way to actually manage the budget to get it back down to a 0% levy increase is to reduce staff hours. And the way we were gonna do that was reduce 4 hours a week. So really, when you talk about services, it just continues to cut down on the ability for the educators to have that support. Our support staff in the office aren't just there to answer phones and greet the public. They're very much working with the educators on their programs, helping me with some budget stuff. We put together flyers, programs, advertising, work with the community, work with media relationships, all on behalf of the educators so they can go out to the public and do all the great work that we do outside of the office. So that was really where the decisions came from. And I think that option two is kind of balancing, not giving up some support staff time, but giving up some possible office type resources to make the office function forward.
So it reduces one
One
support staff,
support staff, 4 hours.
28 to 24 hours a week.
Yeah.
And then I don't have it in front of me, but I'm just remembering, we have contracts with the extension
Yep.
agents, and there is an increase that's built in by the state with that.
Yeah.
But we don't pay the entire cost of those salaries. We only pay a portion of those salaries. So while the county is funding the support staff totally, we're only funding like the Chelsea Wanakes of the world partially. And that's built into the budget as well. And it's not a 3% increase, it's less than that.
Right.
What I remember.
So the way that educator contracts work is you pay a flat fee for programs. So the flat fee for a full-time educator is $43,600. So that's what you get. Chelsea, you contribute 43,000. Well, not even, because she's 80% time, so 80% of that 43,600. Carlene Craddock, you actually do pay 75% of the actual cost for the 4-H educator. That one's not a flat fee.
That's what they do. What do you call them?
The educators?
Yeah.
So Carlene Craddock is the 4-H educator. And the way that was worked out, the county does pay 75% of her actual, yep, she's full-time. And the county pays 75% of her actual time. Chelsea Wanakee is on what we call a co-share, co-funded program. So she's a flat fee at 80%. So the county pays 80% of $43,600 for Chelsea. And then Carolyn Heidi, who is shared with Crawford County, you pay half of the
And
40
what's that job?
agriculture, sorry.
I don't know what, okay.
So she's the agriculture agent and shared with Crawford County, and you guys pay half of the 43,600, so that's kind of where that contracted service is. You used to also pay with that a $500 professional development fee, also per educator. That has gone away this year to offset some of the increase in the cost that the state had in the contract service. Last year, the contract service number was 42,300, so it went up roughly $1,200 or something like that.
So can I ask? a
Yeah, go
question?
ahead. Yep.
So you have three people, one at 80%, one at full percent, one at 50%.
Yeah.
That's the whole office now?
And we also have FoodWise staff, which is funded through federal SNAP Ed grants. So by having extension in the county, you also have access to FoodWise.
Mm-hmm.
The FoodWise educators provide nutrition education, and
That one person?
so we have Christine Lockwood in the county, and she's the educator for the county, and you also have access to the Sheena, can't remember Sheena's last name right offhand, but she's a coordinator, so does some education within the county.
Mr. Seep, so she was just asking about the different staff that are in the UW Extension office, and he's just listing off the different staff, but I want to jump in here and say too that the FoodWise educators, the county doesn't pay any for
Right.
those positions, so.
And we wouldn't, but we wouldn't get them if we didn't have the other.
Correct.
Correct?
We wouldn't get the FoodWise educators if we didn't have the other extension agents? Is that
If we
what
didn't
you're
have it, yeah, so it's extension, it's a part of the extension office, right? It used to be tied to the family living educator, that's no longer the case. But you know, that support for the extension office really is where you get the support for the FoodWise educators as well.
Mr. Cooey?
Yeah, just kind of give a breakdown of where your budget was 5 years ago and where it is today.
Yeah, so one of the things that I had a unique perspective of is prior to the area extension director model, I was the department head here. So when I came back and just kind of looked at where we were at, and I know Marty was on the committee at this time, when we had full complement of educators, we had community development, we had full-time 4-H, full-time family living, full-time ag, 2 35-hour-a-week support staff. Extension was, we were actually drawing $250,000 of levy expense. Probably, I can't remember exactly what the date was. I think that was 16, 17, somewhere in there. I don't have the number right off the top of my head, what year that was. So we've been continually scaling back to go from $250,000, not that long, within the last 10 years, to being down to 185. And we're still trying to provide as many services as we can. I think we're still highly connected within the community. So.
Okay, Ms. Lutt?
I just want to make sure I understand. So the agents that are on contracts, they are not on the wage scale. It's set by the
Nope,
state.
that's
And
not
so
by-
the only two employees are the full-time and the part-time.
That is correct.
Administrative staff are on the wage scale.
Okay, Ms. Gentis?
I'm just curious.
Just make sure to speak up. I can try to repeat.
4-H, how many young people are enrolled in 4-H?
I'll be completely honest with you, Linda, I can't answer that right off the top of my head. It's around 200, I think, is the last number that I, just trying to, right now I'm covering 10 counties, so remembering how many under each county is.
Okay, anyone else?
With the budget submitted, that included a reduction from 28 to 24 hours per staff, or that was an additional one that was explored?
That was the additional one that was explored.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, so the one that I think was listed in your budget packet was the one where we just reduced some, like, dues and travel and some out of the operation or the supply budget.
Thank you.
Can you repeat that? I didn't quite follow that exchange. What did you ask?
Just clarifying that the budget that we have in here, we had talked about exploring the reduction from the support staff from 28 hours to 24 hours. And that's not in the budget that we uploaded for the preliminary.
Correct.
So is it a 0% increase in levy or no?
No. It is
So which one, there were 3 budgets, which one?
option 2.
Here, which one did you guys enter?
Put in is it's at 185,032, which is a overall increase of $1,496.45.
I thought it was a $6,000 increase.
That's if we didn't do anything.
That's if you didn't do anything.
Okay, so it's a 1,400?
Yeah.
The total impact from expenses for additional wages and salaries was 6,000.
Yep.
You whittled that down to a 1,000, almost 1,500
Yep,
based on other operational expenses.
correct,
What was brought forward.
So this one does not include the reduction in the staff.
correct.
So the budget option you all entered was the middle option. It wasn't the 0% one, and it wasn't the 3% one, it was the one in the middle.
Correct.
Okay. I'm sorry because I remember seeing the three options, now that he reminded me there are three options, so I understand now.
Sorry for the confusion.
So essentially, you're asking for us for $1,500 in addition above your taxable information.
Right. I'd love the 6, but realistically, we'll take the 15.
Okay, Mr. Brewer.
I've been involved with the extension for a number of years as a committeeman, then I was actually chair of the committee for a while. So, there has been a constant whittling down of agents, and when I first got on the committee, we had, and you mentioned the name of that agent before, what was it again?
The community resource development educator.
Yeah, and basically that was for all intents and purposes, the economic development person, and frankly, the agent involved, in particular, wasn't doing anything.
Right.
So we felt there was no need to carry it forward. Unfortunately, at the same time, the economic development director for the city in Richland County, ceased being. So for many years, we didn't have anything going on in that area, so that's why we're kind of at the juncture. We'll be talking to Mr. Glassbrenner later on this evening, but that's why we kind of ended up where we are, not doing anything. But then the other thing, we had to critically look at the ag agent. When Adam did it, he was very active, and you're a hog man.
Mm-hmm.
And he did a lot of hog seminars, and that is an expanding area of agriculture in the county and surrounding counties. So, but we felt necessary to cut that to 50%. We share now with Crawford County. So, and then the final thing, I had quite a go around with and basically the UW extension has gone through some of the same problems that we went through at the campus. Change in format, change in thinking, change, it seemed like every year something changed. But the latest thing, or the thing that bothered me the most, was when we wanted to change the emphasis of 4-H, and it was gonna be called something else, and I'm glad you're using the term 4-H. I told them, no, Richland County is a 4-H county, we're gonna stay a 4-H county if we have to pay it ourselves. So I think that's why we came out with that different percentage there. We're paying a little bit more for our 4-H person. So, what I'm saying is leading all up to, yes, we have seen quite a reduction in the amount of money we spend. But we've held it together. And one of the areas we always looked at was reduction in administrative salaries. And, I've been pounded on for a number of years. You can't do it. We can't reduce that. And, if this budget you're submitting, and you know this department, you know it. If this is what you think you can do for another $1,000 a year, then I'll support it. But,
Yeah.
but,
I mean, the budget numbers, where we cut out of the office supplies and agent expenses, that was a collaborative effort with the educators, with them understanding the need to keep the support staff intact. That was the compromise that the educators come up with. That wasn't an Adam idea. That was definitely, they see that value, so. Is it ideal? It's never ideal, right? Every committees, every department's gonna say it's not ideal for us, but we can manage through this budget.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Haiti, and we appreciate you taking the time to come today. And I saw lunch got snuck in, so maybe we can take 5 minutes to get lunch on people's plate and then have Carla Devna come up and talk about the fair once we get our lunches.
Congratulations, Adam.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so it'll be a lot nicer not having to drive an hour and a half to my closest county, my furthest county is an hour and a half.
I think we'll just take 3 minutes maybe. Try to start at 12:15 here. If folks want to grab some food. Do we want the plates and napkins over there? If you don't mind grabbing. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, you're far more generous than Mr. Langrick with our breaks, and I want you to know how much I appreciate it.